Now the labor question is like, well, shit, we don't need as much human labor, but you still have that same reality. You still are dependent on selling your labor into their economy in order, to feed yourself. So what happens when your labor becomes obsolete? You understand what I'm saying? What happens when your labor becomes obsolete? I want to raise this up here because this is very important, and this is why we require, a political and a historical analysis. Because without a political and historical analysis, if you only have a religious analysis, the best you can tell your people is hope, pray, believe, and hustle harder. But if you have a political and a historical analysis, you can start to, examine what has occurred and what has gotten us into this situation, right? So I want to just share just a couple of those historical conversations that have happened, long before us, right? So this is pre-1923. Marcus Garvey writes an essay called "The White Man's Solution for the Negro Problem in America." And if you look at the part here that's highlighted, it says, now that America is underdeveloped and we have but 34 million in population, a number not large enough to develop the country as we want it, we will use the 4 million blacks until we have built up the country sufficiently. And when we no longer need their labor, we will throw them off and let them starve economically and die of themselves or immigrate elsewhere. We care not where. Then no one can accuse us of being inhumane to the Negro, as we shall not have massacred him, right? So this is Garvey pre-1923, almost more than 100 years ago, having this conversation about the vulnerability, the economic vulnerability that we as Black people face, right? The level of maladaptive dependence that we've been locked into because we are landless, right? This is why Malcolm says, Malcolm always says, he says, revolution is about land. You understand what I'm saying? Revolution is about land. So when you have people talking about the changes that are happening in the economy, whether it be, the Web3, and crypto and NFTs and all those things, like, no knock on that. And I'm not against technology. But what I'm saying is that those things are not revolutionary for our economic situation. Our economic situation, the primary condition is the fact that our land has been taken from us. Right. And if your solution or if your answer to that level of economic calamity or economic catastrophe is like, well, just get an LLC or just hustle hard or just, educate yourself financially, like that's not an answer, or at least it's not an intelligent answer. Right. So that's Garvey right there. This right here is Carter G. Woodsen, 1933. Speaks to a very similar situation. He says here, in the present crisis, however, the highly educated Negroes find very little to exploit, and in their untoward condition, they have no program of finding a way out. They see numerous instances of Negroes losing their jobs in white establishments. In fact, these things occur daily. Janitors who have been giving satisfaction are abruptly told that they will no longer be needed. Negro waiters in hotels are being informed that their places will go to white workers. Negro truck drivers are ordered to step down and let the needy of the other race go up. We hear so much of this that we wonder what the outcome will be. And this readjustment, of course, when there are fewer opportunities left for those who cannot or do not have the opportunity to operate machines, the Negro will naturally be turned out of their positions by their employers who think first of their own race, right? What is Carter G. Woodsen saying here? He's saying that the white folks is race first. So when the economic situations get bad, they're going to take care of their own first. He says, in the ultimate passing of the Depression, however, Negroes will not be much better off when some of the whites now displacing them will rise to higher levels. In the economic order of tomorrow, there will be little use for the factotum or scullion. Man will not need such personal attention when he can buy a machine to serve him more efficiently. The menial Negroes, the aggregate of parasites whom the highly educated Negro has exploited. And I want to get into that, the exploitation of each other, right? Whom the highly educated Negro has exploited will not be needed tomorrow. What then will become of our highly educated Negroes who have no initiative? We have appealed to the talented 10th for a remedy, but they have nothing to offer. Their minds have never functioned in this all important sphere. The educated Negro shows no evidence of vision. He should see a new picture. The Negroes are facing the alternative of rising in the sphere of production to supply their proportion of the manufacturers and merchants, or of going down to the graves of the paupers. The Negro must now do for himself or die out as the world undergoes readjustment, right? So, this notion of economic readjustment is not a it's not a new one. We were having these conversations more than 100 years ago about machines replacing labor. This is an essay right here. This is written, I believe this is 1964 this was published. So what you see here, this is Sidney Wellheim, who wrote an essay. It's actually a book as well, but I have the essay version of it. It's called "Who Needs the Negro?" And it's just, again, in this joint, it's just speaking, you know, to and I'll read this quote right here. It says, with the onset of automation, the Negro is moving out of his historical state of oppression into uselessness. Increasingly, he is not so much economically exploited as he is irrelevant. The tremendous historical change for the Negro is taking place in these terms. He is not needed. He is not so much oppressed as unwanted, not so much abused as ignored. If he disappeared tomorrow, he would hardly be missed. As automation proceeds, it is easier and easier to disregard him. Basically, 20 million Negroes are unwanted. Our values inhibit genocide, so we discard them by establishing new forms of Indian reservations called Negro ghettos. I mean, that was Sidney Wellheim. So it's just like, when you don't have that political, right, or historical understanding of our reality, like, no entrepreneurship, and hustling and grinding hard, right, bag chasing does not change this economic reality, right? The primary economic reality is that our primary source of survival has been removed from us, right? That's the issue that we are faced with. And there's levels to this conversation. It gets deep. Today being it's MLK weekend. Wanted to bring this up real quick because it is MLK weekend. What was the March on Washington about? It was a march on Washington for jobs and for freedom. So even back then, it was like, yo,